In 2023, I predicted the North Carolina Tar Heels would go 11-1, lose to Clemson in the regular season, and then upset them in the ACC championship game. Now, Carolina started hot at 6-0, much to the chagrin of the mainstream media who picked them to be 3-3, 4-2 maybe if everything fell in their lap. 6-0, bro. And I looked like a genius. Then UVA came to town, and they threw a stinking brick through the Heels' glass window. The season ended up spiraling out of control, and it ended with an inexcusable showing at NC State, followed by a whooping in Charlotte at the hands of the Mountaineers of West Virginia and the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Carolina finished 8-5, 4-4 in the ACC. So have I learned my lesson? The hell with it, bro. I'm all in.
You don't want none! You don't want none!
What's going on, Tar Heel Nation and college football fanatics? It is your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel, and in this exciting huddle, bro, one of my favorite things to do, I am going to be making my official season predictions for the 2024 UNC football season. You say, Russ, we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. My response will be, we have 3 of them, bro. Legitimately 3 of them. And I'm not stinking worried about it. And I have, in my own opinion, who I think is the front runner right now. But before we jump into that, Tar Heel or enemy, friend or foe, I want you to consider subscribing to the channel, smashing that like button, hit the notification bell, and share this video with family and friends. At the end of the day, college football fans choose the colors they wear for a plethora of reasons. Obviously, being an alum, some are just proud of the state they are from, and some of them, they grew up close to that campus, so they were raised in it. Regardless of what your reasons are, bro, we are about to get into the most wonderful time of year, and it all begins with the start of college football, bro. So support your boy, come along for the ride, and let's stinking enjoy this college football season together. And for the North Carolina Tar Heels, it all starts on Thursday night, August 29th, 8 p.m. on Fox, as the Heels travel to Minneapolis and Big Ten country to take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, for the second time in the history of both of these schools. Now, North Carolina is 1-0 all time against the Gophers with that 31-13 whooping they put on them in Chapel Hill last year. But this is a very tricky game to predict for multiple reasons, but here we go. Drake Maye in that game threw for 414 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 2 interceptions. Omarion Hampton, the All-American running back, was Carolina's leading rusher with only 46 yards on 13 carries and 1 touchdown. Now, Nate McCollum had a huge football game. 165 yards, 15 receptions, and a tutty, which is kind of alarming. Not obviously Nate McCollum's portion of this, but the fact that it took Drake to throw for over 400 yards. Omarion Hampton against that stout Big Ten defensive front only had 46 rushing yards on 13 carries and a touchdown. I mean, that's something to kind of take into consideration, man. That's only 3.5 yards per carry against that stinking front. Now, Carolina replaces 4 offensive linemen additionally, along with it being game 1 in front of a more than likely sold-out crowd. Now, gone for the Minnesota Golden Gophers is the Greek rifle, Ethan Kaliakmanis, who only threw for 133 yards and a pick in that game against UNC. But back is sophomore running back Darius Taylor, who was the Gophers' lone star, and he rushed for 138 yards and a touchdown on 22 carries. And don't forget that this Gophers team returns 4 of their own offensive linemen. These are big boys. Then you have senior wide receiver Daniel Jackson, who didn't play against the Hills in 2023, but had a really good season, finishing with 831 yards and 8 touchdowns on 59 receptions. Outside of Jackson, though, there are some serious questions on who incoming senior transfer quarterback Max Brosmer will throw the football to. That kid's coming from the University of New Hampshire. He threw for 3,459 yards, 29 touchdowns, and only 6 INTs for the Wildcats. And he led all of the FCS. The dude completed 291 passes out of 455 attempts, which was good for a 64% completion percentage. And he was named a team captain out of spring camp. And if you really want to get down to it, Minnesota was severely hamstrung by their poor quarterback play last year. Is Brosmer the guy? That is the stinking question. Now, here's my gut feeling. This is going to be a tight football game. All right, I like UNC's secondary to put the clamps on any potential air attack the Gophers have, even with Brosmer coming over from UNH. I feel comfortable with Huzzy and Marcus Allen on an island with Jackson. But can the Heels stop the Gophers from getting downhill with the running game? That's the question, man. Can that interior defensive front come out swinging, and much like the South Carolina the South Carolina game at the beginning of last season, can the Tar Heels keep Minnesota from keeping the ball on the ground and moving the chains? The key, of course, is going to be that defensive front seven, man, and how effective they can be at keeping the Gophers in third and long situations. On the flip side, will North Carolina be able to establish the run with Big O and Darwin? Can Darwin Barlow be a consistent second running back option? Can Caleb Hood stay healthy, right, against that solid Big Ten front? Remember, our All-American had 13 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown last year in Chapel Hill. So Carolina's going to have a ton of work cut out for them. Overall, though, this North Carolina team is still the more athletic team. I think they have a lot more weapons on the offensive side of the football, despite the quarterback issue, and I'm hoping that the quietness that we've seen coming out of Chapel Hill's camp is a renewed sense of focus on the mission. And the mission is to win. Give me the Heels in a tight, lower scoring affair in this one to start the season as the Heels move to 1-0 with a W against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, bringing their all-time record to 2-0. I just think Carolina's the more talented team, and I really think that if there was going to be a year, this has got to be the year that Carolina puts it together. Despite Drake Maye being gone, I think that we have capable quarterbacks in that room, and we have a two-deep that's one of the best in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And when you look at the recruiting and all the other aspects that, surround this football game, Carolina is the more talented team. And although they're up in Minneapolis, I'm going to take the Heels to start off 1-0. The Heels will then get a couple of extra days of rest before their 2024 home debut in Chapel Hill as they take on the Charlotte 49ers at 3:30 p.m. on the ACC network. Now, this will be the first time that Carolina and Charlotte meet on the gridiron. They were scheduled to play in 2020. However, the game was canceled due to COVID. The 49ers finished 3-9, 2-6 in the AAC, and they returned only 4 starters on offense along with 2 on defense, to include former Tar Heel cornerback Dante Balfour. And this is not going to be the last time that Carolina plays a team that has one of their old players on it. I think that's just the state of college football these days. Now, last year, the 49ers averaged a measly 17.5 points per game. However, head coach Biff Poggi has brought in 22 transfers, including Florida transfer Max Brown, who completed 19 of 28 passes for 192 yards and a pick in 6 games for the Gators. They also bring in Iowa State transfer running back Cartavius Norton, who averaged a tad under 4 yards per carry for the Cyclones. Now, despite Charlotte's upgrades to some key positions, give me the Tar Heels to win this football game comfortably and their 2024 Kenan Stadium debut, moving them to 2-0 on the season. Up next is a visit from the North Carolina Central Eagles on September 14th from just down the road in Durham. Game is scheduled as a 6 p.m. kick and will be televised by the ACC Network. There's really not much to say about this one. For time's sake, we're going to keep it moving as the Heels move to 3-0 on the season. If they lose this game, or even if it's stinking close, burn the tape, fire everybody. Next, September 21st, the Heels will take on the James Madison Dukes in Chapel Hill. Now, last year, in my opinion, this would have been a really interesting matchup as the Dukes were a very formidable opponent. However, gone is the 2023 Sun Belt Coach of the Year, Curt Cignetti, to Indiana, along with 96% of their production from last year's offense, either to graduation or the transfer portal, according to their new head coach, Bob Chesney. Now, that's not to say that this thing is just going to be a walk in the park. In comes former Washington Husky starter senior Dylan Morris, along with our boy George Pettaway, transferring over from UNC. I hate to see that kid go, man. I really wish he would have got more burn. I think he's a really talented back, and I'm hoping for George to have great success against everybody but UNC. They also bring over Ayo Adebayo, who came over from North Texas after having a 1,000-yard season. Now, Chesney averaged 37 points per game at Holy Cross and had one of the most complete rush offenses as they averaged 6.3 yards per carry. So you can expect JMU to try to establish the run, especially with those new stinking tools in the toolbox, especially against that Carolina front until they can prove they can stop it. And with the Dukes returning only 5 starters on offense and defense, I think they keep it close for maybe a half, as we unfortunately all know how these type of games play out with North Carolina, a la App State and ECU. But Carolina eventually pulls away, sending the Heels to 4-0 on the season. And they wrap up their preseason schedule, if you will, by starting the season 4-0. Now we're really going to get into the meat and potatoes of the 2024 football campaign, starting with a very sneaky football game against the Duke Blue Devils in Durham for the battle for the victory bell. Now, Mike Elko took his talents back to Texas A&M, despite his promise to be in Durham longer than Mac was in Chapel Hill, and the Devils brought in former Miami Hurricane head coach and Mac Brown assistant Manny Diaz, which still perplexes me as a fit. North Carolina leads the all-time series 64-40 with 4 ties, and is currently on a 5-game winning streak, keeping the bell in the better shade of blue for the last half-decade. However, you know that this is going to be a statement game for Manny Diaz, and both he and that fan base will be ready in Durham. The pinnacle of Duke football is beating Carolina, so you know that they're going to pull out all the stops. In comes former Texas Longhorn quarterback Malik Murphy after Riley Leonard transferred to Notre Dame. They lost Jordan Waters to the transfer portal as he transferred to NC State, but they bring back Jacquez Moore, who rushed for 674 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. They also bring back Jordan Moore at wide receiver, who had 835 yards on 62 catches. On the other side of the football, they lost all 4 starters on their defensive front to the portal and or the NFL draft, plus linebacker Dorian Mousey and safety Brandon Johnson. But you know that this team is going to replenish and play with their hair on fire. They always do against our boys in Carolina Blue. 3 of the last 5 games have been decided by 3 points or less. Now, Mac Brown has fared much better against the Devils than the stepchildren from Raleigh, and despite the close games as of late, I'm going to say North Carolina starts fast for once in this one, and they win fairly comfortably, moving to 5-0 on the season. 6 straight wins against the Devils, and once again, the victory bell stays in Carolina blue. After a hard-fought victory against the Dukies, the Heels return to the friendly confines of Kenan Stadium to take on the Pitt Panthers, who will be coming off of a bye week. Interesting, with UNC coming off of a physical rivalry game and Pitt getting 2 weeks to prepare, as they will be off the week prior. The Panthers return 7 starters on offense and 2 starters on defense. North Carolina leads the all-time series against Pitt 12-5, and they beat the Panthers last year in Pittsburgh 41-24. Now, Pitt returns Nate Yarnell, who started the last 2 games of the season, throwing for 595 yards and 5 touchdowns to only 1 interception. He went 1-1 in his starts. Pitt also brought in Alabama transfer freshman quarterback Eli Holstein, who could challenge Yarnell for the QB1 spot. Now, offensive coordinator Cade Bell ran a spread no-huddle offense at Western Carolina, which was annually one of the best in FCS in the 3 seasons he held that position. He brings over Raphael Williams Jr. and Sincere Lee from Western Carolina, who got 82 balls for 1,426 yards and 14 touchdowns, which is obviously a ton of production. But can he do that against an ACC caliber schedule? That's the question. Interestingly, Kanata Mumfield also returns for a senior season with the Panthers. Carolina, once again, is the more talented team. Okay, they're at home. They're the more talented team. I think this one is close for maybe 3 quarters before the Heels pull away and move to 6-0 on the season, 2-0 in conference. Duke, Pitt, you couldn't ask for a better start to your conference schedule. So we've reached the halfway mark. The Heels are sitting at 6-0. They've played absolutely nobody. Right? 6-0. Couple of close football games as they kind of figure everything out. I can honestly see the Minnesota game being somewhat of a toss-up, but I think Carolina finds a way, obviously, in year 6 of Mac. They have to. I mean, good night. It's just inexcusable at this point. So now, I'll be the first to tell you that the actual reason for my confidence in UNC being 6-0 at the halfway point, again, just like last year, it's in large part due to the fact that it's about as easy as a schedule as you could hope for, like I already said, right? That is the reason. It's a super easy schedule, and if you go back to one of my earlier videos where I talk about the recruiting, you know, the caliber of coaching, etc., Carolina is on their schedule, you know, easily the second best program, recruiting, coaches, etc., behind Florida State. And 6-0, man. There's really no excuse with what we have for Carolina not to be 6-0. Now, for the second half of the regular season, Carolina has had 3 straight years of finishing 1-4 against Power 5 or Power 4, whatever it is in today's world. Can the Heels finally end this thing on the right foot? Well, in comes the Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech. Brent Key against his old boss, Jeff Collins. And my, how the tables have turned. Now, Tech leads the all-time series against the Heels, 33-21 with 3 ties, with the Jackets currently on a 3-game winning streak. They return 8 players on offense, including 4 of 5 starting offensive linemen, which should be one of the best in the conference, including quarterback Haynes King, who passed for 2,842 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions. He also had 737 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns, along with junior running back Jamal Haynes, who had a 1,000-yard season on 174 carries and 7 touchdowns, averaging 6.1 yards per carry. And then there's 5'11" Eric Singleton Jr., who had 714 yards on 48 receptions for 6 touchdowns. Look, this is a Georgia Tech offense that is going to be able to light it up. I'm a huge fan of Haynes and Singleton. They're so slippery in the open field, bro, and they presented so many problems last year for the Heels in Atlanta. I do think North Carolina is better equipped to deal with the Tech passing attack with Huzzy back out to his natural position at the corner. But Haynes is scary, bro, especially against the Carolina defensive front that has been gashed over the past few years. On the flip side of that, the Tech defense has been just as bad as Carolina's as of late. So much that Brent Key replaced 4 assistants on that side of the ball. The Jackets gave up 221.3 yards per game on the ground last year, and Carolina would have been good out there in Atlanta had they continued to feed Hampton the ball. But of course they didn't. Can Carolina make enough stops against that vaunted Tech offense? Will Carolina run the stinking football against their stinking weakness? Let me say this. Carolina has recruited at a much higher caliber over the past 5 years. Go ahead and watch episode 1 of Russ's Tar Heel Talk, okay? Carolina has a Hall of Fame football coach at the helm, and Jeff Collins has been very acquainted with the way Brent Key thinks. Carolina's at home, and the Heels should have all the fuel in the world to get over this curse from the boys in urine and white. Yes, those are the team colors for Georgia Tech. I'm changing my pick from my way too early prediction show to Carolina handling business against this team. Mac and Jeff get some sweet revenge, and Tar Heel Nation starts to believe as Carolina moves to 7-0, 3-0 in the conference. Hey, man, it's about time. It is about time. There's no excuse not to beat Georgia Tech. You've recruited better. You're a more talented team. You have a Hall of Fame coach. You're at home. Good night, dude. I mean, we have got to start beating teams that we should beat. And I think that Georgia Tech is going to be a challenge. I think it's a good football team. But I still think that it's time that we stop losing to inferior teams. And North Carolina is a more talented team from top to bottom than the Jackets in 2024. 7-0, baby. 3-0 in the conference. Carolina will then get a bye week in 2 weeks to gear up for a 2-game stretch as the Heels will travel to Charlottesville to take on the Who's in the South's oldest rivalry. North Carolina leads the all-time series 65-59 with 4 ties. The Who's ruined the Heels' momentum last year by coming into Chapel Hill and knocking off the number 10 Tar Heels in one of the most shocking performances I've ever experienced as a Carolina fan. Just inexcusable. A 1-win team comes into Chapel Hill and hands us our first loss right after we, beat the brakes off of the Miami Hurricanes. Just unacceptable. I mean, it's still one of the most inexcusable losses, I think, in program history. Just unbelievable. And Carolina never recovered after that game. Now, Tony Elliott is the current head coach at UVA, and he's won 3 games in each of his past 2 years. UVA is somewhat of a quarterback battle going on with graduate transfer Tony Muskett, who threw for over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And then you compare that with sophomore Anthony Calandria, who he finished with almost 2,000 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and 9 picks. Both individuals started 6 games. And from everything I'm hearing inside of Virginia's camp, it seems like Calandria is the guy that has the most upside, even though he's the underclassman. The Who's have to replace Malik Washington outside a wide receiver, but they did bring in Chris Tyree from Notre Dame and North Carolina's own Andre Green Jr., who joined senior Malachi Field and junior J.R. Wilson. Despite the quarterback situation, Virginia was 4th in the ACC with 250 passing yards per game. So the offense should be fairly decent. I would say middle of the pack ACC. UVA's big concern is from the defensive side of the football, where they allowed last year 33.8 points per game. dead last in the Atlantic Coast Conference. They were last in sacks in 2023, and their run defense was ranked 12th in the conference by giving up 184.5 yards per game. Should be a really good team to pound the stinking football against. This is a get-back game for the Hills, man. UVA will be coming off of a tough game at Clemson, and Carolina will have 2 weeks to prepare. There's no stinking excuse. Carolina gets the W. They move to 8-0 on the season, 4-0 in conference. That's right, baby. 8-0, setting up a showdown in Tallahassee. This is almost like Judgment Day 2.0. Judgment Day 2.0, bro. And here we go. North Carolina visits the Florida State Seminoles November 2nd, 2024, which could be one of the biggest games in North Carolina Tar Heels football program history. Now, Florida State owns a resounding 17-3 with one tie lead on our Gridiron Heels. Yes, the schedule will have been vanilla up to this point. Carolina will not have played a ranked opponent, and you can bet the pundits will be talking their smack. No one is going to give the Heels a shot in this one. Let's break it down anyway. Florida State did really well in the transfer portal this year, but they're also replacing a ton, as they have 4 returning offensive players and 4 on the defensive side of the football as well. Head coach Mike Norvell has been a master recently by replacing lost talent with elite high school football recruiting, as well as some really good guys in the portal. They got to replace quarterback Jordan Travis, one of the best in program history, running back Trey Benson, wide receivers Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, crazy duo last year. And then they also got to replace tight end Jaheim Bell, which was one of their more productive tight ends. All those guys were stinking ballers. Now, despite that, FSU returns wide receivers Kentron Poitier, Ja'Kai Douglas, Destin Hill, and Hakeem Williams. And the infamous DJU will be throwing the football their way as he transfers in from Oregon State. I'm still convinced, bro, that UNC is the 2022 ACC champs if DJU stays in that stinking football game. So I have mixed emotions about this. DJU has the body. He's got the frame. He looks prototypical, man, but, you know, he doesn't necessarily scare me at all, if you will. So, you know, they got a bunch of talent that they've lost, okay? But they've also replenished the coverage as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this team wins another ACC title and they get into the first 12-team playoff. I wouldn't be surprised with that at all, man. But I really think Carolina has the talent to win this football game. Yes, that's right. I do believe that North Carolina has the talent to compete and win this football game. These two teams have recruited almost identically by average over the past 5 years. FSU is 17th. UNC has been 20th. When you take in the past 5 years of high school talent and you look at, you know, the high school talent and you put those together, 17th, 20th. That means these teams are pretty even on the outset looking in. The difference here, though, is going to be Doak Campbell Stadium. It's going to be rocking, probably a night game, especially if Carolina's 8-0. And then you have FSU's culture. UNC has to prove to me that they're ready for the lights. I have the Hills taking their first loss of the season and moving 8-1, 4-1 in conference. It's going to be a big game, man. I think Carolina can win this game. But if you ask me right now as a betting man, obviously I'm going to go with the Florida State Seminoles in Tallahassee. But don't be surprised, man, if Carolina stinking, you know, gets it done. Don't be surprised. I'm telling you right now, do not be surprised. Bye week after that with 2 weeks to relish in the pain before the Hills come back to the friendly confines of Keenan Memorial Stadium in Chapel Hill, and they take on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons on my birthday, November 16th, and I will be there for anyone who wants to come and hang out. Now, North Carolina holds a 72-36 and 2 record against the Deacs, dating back to October 18th, 1888. Dave Clawson's one of the best in the industry with doing a lot with a little. Wake Forest went 4-8 last year, 1-7 in conference. They finished last, right? And they really struggled after the departure of Sam Hartman to Notre Dame. Maybe Sam understood the writing on the wall. Hank Backmeyer and Michael Kerner, both 6-year guys, will be vying for the position. Backmeyer has had previous stints at Louisiana Tech and Boise State, where he's thrown for over 8,500 yards. And that's going to be the dictator of what this Wake Forest team is capable of. What kind of quarterback play can they get? Defensively, they're fairly solid, returning 6 starters on that side of the ball. But UNC at our house, hopefully pissed off after 2 weeks of, relishing in that FSU defeat, results in a North Carolina win. I don't see North Carolina losing to Wake Forest at home. I just don't see that, even though Dave Clawson is a tremendous coach. Carolina's just too talented at this stage. Heels moved to 9-1, 5-1 in the conference. Next up will be a trip to frigid Boston in late November to take on the Golden Eagles. Now, Boston College returned 7 starters on offense and 5 starters on defense for a squad that went 7-6, 3-5 in conference last year. And a lot of people are kind of high on Bill O'Brien's squad, especially with the return of junior quarterback Thomas Castellanos, who set a single-season Boston College quarterback record with 1,113 rushing yards. The dude is dangerous outside of the pocket. They also bring in Trayshawn Ward from FSU and our boy Kamari Morales at tight end, who has the all-time touchdowns record for tight ends at UNC. So he's going to be wanting some get back. What is this, like the 3rd or 4th game that we play a significant former Tar Heel? UNC leads the all-time series of Boston College 6-2. And though this is a tricky one traveling up to the north late in the year with NC State looming, I think Carolina pulls it out late as the more talented overall football team, and they move to 10-1, 6-1. That's right, 10 wins before they get to their last regular season game. 10-1, 6-1. And then that leads us to the granddaddy of them all. 2 days after Thanksgiving, little brother comes to town, the Wolf Sack of NC State. This game is going to have so much at stake for this North Carolina program, man. 3 straight years of embarrassment by an inferior football team. A chance at a trip to the ACC championship game and a playoff spot. A rockin' Chapel Hill with all the chips on the table. Bro, this is going to be a Super Bowl in the state of North Carolina, because NC State should also be in fairly good position themselves. Now, one of my favorite stats to show NC State fans, if you will, is that Carolina still holds a resounding record over little bro, 68-39 and 6 ties. But Dave Doran has been a thorn in Mac Brown's side as of late, and it's time to get back on track, bro. You want to do something great, Coach Brown? It happens right here. NC State returns only 5 players on offense and 3 on defense, but they really worked the transfer portal and stocked up on talent. KC Concepcion was ridiculous last year against UNC. But I'm interested to see if he fares the same with a guy like Elijah Huzzy or Marcus Allen draped all over him now that he's moved back outside. Grayson McCall comes over from Coastal Carolina. The dude is a baller, I'm not going to lie. Jordan Waters, very capable back. He comes over from Duke. And then they bring in wide receivers, Noah Rogers from Ohio State. Should be a pretty potent offense in Raleigh. Davin Vann, he's a really good defensive end that Carolina's going to have to be leery of coming off the edge. But I can imagine that there will be something in the game plan in place to chip and maybe take him out of the game as much as possible. And gone is the Step Brothers double. I can't remember, not Will Ferrell. What's the other one's name? That's who Peyton Wilson looked like. Anyway, that dude's gone. He's gone to the NFL. Good. I'm glad. Those are huge shoes to fill for the Wolf Sack. This is a revenge year, bro. This is where not only does North Carolina shock the world by going 11-1 because nobody is thinking that they can do that, They also derail NC State's lone hope of competing for an ACC title themselves, making it all the more sweet. It'll almost be as sweet as watching Caleb Love drain a deep three in the Final Four against the Dukies 2 years ago. Or watching Coach K walk out of Cameron Indoor Stadium the last time taking an L to the Hills. It will literally be that kind of euphoria if North Carolina goes and lays the smackdown against NC State and finishes the season 11-1, 7-1 in conference, and then they will almost surely meet Florida State again in the ACC championship game with a trip to the 12-team playoff on the line. That's exciting, bro. You heard it right here. That's right. Carolina, 11-1, trip to the ACC championship game. And we'll tackle the ACC championship game when we get there. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are like, bro, look at your setting. Look at your gear. You're a stinking homer. This is what you said last year. Carolina finished 8-5. Well, you know what? Here's the deal. Nobody thought Carolina would start 6-0. No one. I don't know anyone else who picked Carolina to start 6-0. So I was right on stinking par for the course. I was shooting an eagle at that time. And then Carolina just dropped the stinking ball. So many games that they should have won. They dropped the ball, right? I'm saying right now that with the schedule that's put in place, okay, for all the naysayers out there, the schedule that's put in place, the talent that is on this roster, the second best talent of any team that we're going to play in that regular season schedule, and a Hall of Fame national championship winning coach at the helm, year 6, there is no reason whatsoever that North Carolina does not at least win double-digit games. But I'm telling you, with this schedule, they should win 11. 11 for sure, and possibly surprise some people in Tallahassee. 11-1, man, you heard it right here. So when we get to stinking December and Carolina's 11-1, you know where you heard it first, bro. You know where you heard it first. And if we're not at 11-1, you know, if it's not something, you know, that's reasonable, 10-2, hey, look, we have once again underachieved, and I'm sick of underachieving. So this isn't just hopeful thinking. I'm looking at this schedule. I'm looking at the talent. I'm looking at the National Championship Hall of Fame winning coach, and I'm saying, hey, look, win the games that you're supposed to win because you are the caliber coach, team, program that you're supposed to be. And then you got an 11-1 season and a trip to the ACC championship game. So, look, I know there's going to be some laughter and some naysayers and everything. Hey, bring it in the comment section, man. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And you tell me, Tar Heel Nation, College Football Nation, when you really break this thing down and you look at all the variables in place, where do you see the Tar Heels landing in 2024? I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you all season long. I love you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one, baby.